Hi everyone. Today I'm going to do something a bit different and not look at an Origipop song exactly, but instead at an Origipop dance. Actually, I'm going to look at 3 dances. Now, I'm not a dancer at all, but I am very good on rollerblades. Why does that matter? Because the dances we'll be looking at today are all dances that were done on skates. The 2 best dancers of the golden age of musical films are probably inarguably Fred Astaire and Gene Kelly. And they are 2 of the dancers we'll be looking at today. The third is perhaps a slightly lesser known dancer, but no less talented. One of my favorite dancers from this era, Donald O'Connor, is probably best known for his work in 1952's Singin' in the Rain, alongside Gene Kelly. But he was also in Call Me Madam from 1953, There's No Business Like Show Business from 1954, and Anything Goes from 1956, all of which showcase his amazing and unique dancing skills. I believe that he is only less well known than Astaire and Kelly because he was just younger than the other 2, and the decline in interest in musical films by the general public cut short what should and would have been a career rivaling those of the other 2. Anyways, today we'll be looking at performances by Fred Astaire, Gene Kelly, and Donald O'Connor, where they dance on roller skates. We'll compare the 3, look at their artistry, skill, and unique tricks and other elements, as well as the song they danced to, and see if we can discover who danced on skates the best. And I should clarify, I'm not a dancer at all, but I grew up playing roller hockey mostly, and some ice hockey, and still skate on hockey skates almost every day, either on ice skates or inline rollerblades. I've never used figure skates or those old quad skates that everyone will be watching today use, but I have done a few dance numbers on my skates just for fun.
2 more fidgety feet.
So, I have a basic understanding of what was required for these dances. Okay, let's look at these 3 dances in chronological order in terms of when they were filmed. That means that we'll start with Fred Astaire's dance. Fred Astaire danced on roller skates in the 1937 film Shall We Dance? This dance is a bit different than the other 2 we'll look at because Astaire danced with a partner for this one, his partner, of course, being the inimitable Ginger Rogers. Now, to set the stage here, Fred and Ginger, playing Peter and Linda, are spending the day in New York City's Central Park and decide to go roller skating. They skate around for a bit and then decide to stop and rest for a while on some benches situated around a sort of small plaza area. They're chatting briefly when Linda realizes Peter mispronounces the words either and neither, at least according to her. Well, this, of course, leads to a song. Let's Call the Whole Thing Off has music by George Gershwin and lyrics by his brother Ira. It's a very fun and clever song which plays on the different pronunciations of certain words and fits the scene really well. It's sung in its entirety, including the intro verse, first by Fred Astaire, then Ginger Rogers as they sit there on the bench. After they finish singing, the music continues playing and they start tapping their feet while they're seated. Then they get up and begin to skate around together. They mostly skate in large circles, but as they go, they do a couple of cool things. They rock back and forth a bit as they go, kind of like they're tapping. And they also do spins and coast on one foot for a while. They can also each individually spin, and they do it really well and in sync with each other here. Then they stop skating and both do some tap dancing, and then pretend to start slipping and fall backwards. They head back the other way, skating in a large circle and doing some of their same tricks again, including the falling backwards one again, but this time they're doing it as they're moving. Then they skate around a bit before they come to a stop centered right in front of the camera. And so far, all of this was one long shot with no cuts, which is pretty impressive. But now there's one cut before they tap once more while standing, then skate around in a circle while doing their rocking, tapping thing, and then finally they finish by striking an arabesque pose on one foot before they both fall onto the grass. Okay, so this dance is pretty cool. It was choreographed by Fred Astaire and longtime contributor Hermes Pan, and it's very smooth and clean. Fred and Ginger are, unsurprisingly, very good together, and they're very in sync. Another cool thing is that it's almost all one shot. The first shot is 1 minute and 42 seconds, and the second one is about 36 seconds. And that's really impressive that they were able to do so much of the dance, especially an unusual one like this on skates, in almost one shot. But it did mean that if there was a mistake anywhere in that first take, They'd have to do it all again. And it did apparently take them about 150 takes to complete. And the second shot, with that ending fall, took more than 15 takes, which ended up causing them both a fair amount of bruising. But it was worth it because the dance looked so good, and the ending fall was pretty funny. And the dancing is boosted by a very good song. This song is clever and funny and is a classic that has survived well beyond just this film. It was covered by many artists, including Ella Fitzgerald, Louis Armstrong, and even Willie Nelson recently. It has also been used in television and other movies, including When Harry Met Sally. But there are some downsides to this number as well. Firstly, it is relatively slow and careful or measured. And one of my biggest issues is that there's just not a lot of variety. They mostly do the same thing several times, which is pretty much just skate around in circles a bunch. This is probably because they just stay in that small area. I think they could have done a bit more if they had changed locations or utilized the benches or stairs somewhere or something, the way they've done in previous dances of theirs, and the way some of the other dances we'll look at do. But overall, it is a nice, simple little dance boosted by an excellent song that showcases really well this duo's expert dancing chemistry and inventiveness. Alright, now let's take a look at the next dance. Donald O'Connor performed his dance number on skates in 1953's I Love Melvin. This movie paired O'Connor with his Singin' in the Rain co-star Debbie Reynolds, but failed to make nearly as big a splash as that film. And it's not surprising. This film didn't have a very big budget and is more of a B-level musical, and as a result, it just really isn't that good. But it does have this entertaining and interesting dance. So let's take a look at it. Alright, so Donald O'Connor, playing Melvin, is here at a bandstand at a park with Clarabelle, the younger sister of Debbie Reynolds' character. Little Clarabelle is played by a young Noreen Corcoran, one of the several Corcoran child actors, the most famous of which was Disney legend Kevin Corcoran. Anyways, Melvin is feeling a bit blue, so Clarabelle sings him a song to cheer him up, titled Life Has Its Funny Little Ups and Downs. After she's done singing him the song, he puts on a pair of skates and starts skating with her in the bandstand. He does a few things like little spins with her, and then is crouched down low on one skate with his other leg out in front of him. After this, he dances solo, and also does a few wide circles around the bandstand floor, with some spins and forward to backward transitions. Then he jumps over the railing and spins around multiple poles with the help of rotating light fixtures. Then there's a pretty obvious cut in the shot, and now we see a full-on tap dance routine. It's pretty obvious that the wheels of the skates have been locked at this point, and that was what required the cut. After he's done with that, there's another cut, so he can get the regular skates back on. And then he does this thing where he pretends to run forward, all while he's going down the steps. Then he skates the length of each step as he heads back up the stairs to get to the bandstand. Then there's another cut, and he ends by skating faster and faster around the bandstand in a circle. But the reason for that last cut is apparent if you look carefully, because now there's a wire or something that seems to be connecting him to the middle of the bandstand floor, so he can go a lot faster. Then it ends with another cut to a scene of O'Connor, or maybe a stuntman, careening through the railing of the bandstand into the bushes below. And it must have been a forceful impact because it appears to have knocked the skates right off his feet. Okay, so this dance scene is quite different than the Fred and Ginger one. Besides being a solo number, it's a bit more energetic, and perhaps unsurprisingly, given Donald O'Connor's other numbers, it is really unique with some interesting elements to it. I really like the jumps and spins around the poles, and they're all one shot. And even though it's not in regular skates, his tap dance is good too. I also think the way he skates down the stairs is really neat. And this actually seems like one of the trickiest things he does to me, because he has to sort of run in place on the skates, but he's actually moving forward a bit as he does. And at the same time, he's stepping down a step each time. And he times it so that he makes it to the other side right when he reaches the bottom. It's pretty good. And of course, like all the other dancers, he's got good movement and is very smooth. And the ending, despite being very similar to Fred and Ginger's, is fun too. However, on the other hand, he also doesn't have a lot of room, and there isn't a huge variety of things he does. And even though he had some unique, fun things to this dance, it requires more cuts and some additional help to get them done. Additionally, the song isn't nearly as good as the one in Fred and Ginger's number. This song has music by Joseph Miro and lyrics by Mac Gordon, and it's a fine little song, but not nearly as catchy or clever as Let's Call the Whole Thing Off. But overall, this dance is definitely a fun number that really showcases O'Connor's physicality and ability to incorporate various layers of unique elements in his dances. Now, let's move on to the last dance we'll be taking a look at. Gene Kelly followed in the footsteps, or skate tracks, of the other three by performing a dance number in skates in the film It's Always Fair Weather from 1955. This film is interesting for a few reasons. It is a bit more cynical than most musicals of the era. It stars Sid Charisse, but doesn't give her and Gene Kelly a dance together, and in fact she hardly dances at all. And in my opinion, it's just not that good. When it was released, it didn't get the traditional build-up and ended up losing money for MGM. But again, it did feature a great and unique dance number by Gene Kelly on skates, which was called by one critic the last great dance solo of his career. So, let's take a look at this dance. Alright, so Gene Kelly here is playing Ted, and the setup for this scene is that he's running away from some guys who are after him, so he goes into a skating rink to hide. He puts on skates to blend in, but then when he leaves, he forgets to take them off. He's also quite happy with himself because some lady likes him, and so he starts singing. In a departure from the earlier dances, where the singing is done before the dancing starts, he actually sings as he's skating, at least for a little while. First, he just casually skates down the sidewalk, curving back and forth, before he does a small circle here where he transitions forward to backwards and then back, so he's always facing the same way. Then he takes a quick break where he just stands there and sings. Then he heads off down the sidewalk again and jumps down off the curb before he does a much bigger circle where he stays facing the same way. Then he gets back onto the sidewalk and skates on one foot for a while before he comes to a stop for a second. Then he casually heads down the sidewalk and is confused about why everyone's looking at him. Then he realizes he accidentally left on the skates. Then he does some tapping on the skates, and unlike Donald O'Connor, these are still the actual skates with the regular working wheels. In this tapping sequence, he also does another circle and spin and pretends to be running as he's moving backwards. Then he drops down almost to one knee as he's coasting, followed by some crossover steps, alternating which foot is in front and behind. Then another knee drop before he does some more tapping. This is followed by some little side steps before he does another arabesque pose, and then hops onto the other sidewalk and spins before he slides gracefully to a stop. This is followed by some more tapping, then this sideways coasting with both feet facing out, then more tapping, this time with lots of spins. Then he alternates, stepping up and down the sidewalk before he lifts one leg as he goes over the fire hydrant. Then there's another big circle before he jumps off the sidewalk into the street to finish up the dance with a big tap sequence, which includes several impressive elements, such as one-footed jumps, running in place, and whatever you call this. Then he circles once more before he's finally done. Okay, so this one is obviously much bigger and grander than the other two. The length of this dance is about twice as long as the other two. It's 4 minutes long compared to just about 2 minutes for both of the other two, although that does include the 30 seconds where he's just standing and singing. It's also much bigger in terms of space. This dance was filmed on the large New York backlot at MGM, and Gene makes use of all that area in a way the other performers didn't get a chance to. It allows him to get up quite a bit more speed and just have more space, both of which allow him to do more tricks and various elements. Now, he does have several more cuts than the other two, but that's primarily because it's both longer and larger. And he does have a few long takes as well, some of which are almost 30 seconds long. And these go to show that he didn't lock the skates or anything for any of the sequences. So when he's tapping in them, he's really tapping in roller skates. And Gene Kelly himself actually said in an interview that he bought those skates from a store down the street from his house, and they weren't altered in any way. Anyways, it's a very well done number with a lot of impressive dancing and skating as well. He's really smooth and graceful, and his dancing at the end of the number is really impressive in its artistry, technique, and energy. It's a truly sensational number. However, there are a few downsides. One of these is the song. I Like Myself has music by Andre Previn and lyrics by prolific writing duo Betty Comden and Adolph Green. And while it's a fine song and sung well by Gene Kelly here, it isn't nearly as good as Let's Call the Whole Thing Off. In my opinion, it's actually the worst of the three songs, but that probably just comes down to personal preference. I also think the idea that he forgot he had skates on and then his goofy face here is a little silly. The last thing that's not great about this number is this slightly racist part. So, overall, these three sequences are all awesome dance numbers that combine artistry, physicality, and inventiveness in really fun and entertaining ways. And while none of the strictly skating elements are really too technically hard for someone used to skates, they do seem like they'd be pretty tricky for someone not terribly comfortable on skates. I wasn't able to figure out how much skating background these 4 performers had, but my guess is that while they might not have had much, their inherent dancing skill, their command over their body's movements, along with their well-known penchant for hard work and drive for perfection, helped immensely. And while the skating itself doesn't seem too hard for someone used to skates, the precision, timing, and grace, along with the added dance moves and other elements, makes these numbers really impressive. But which one's the best? Well, it probably actually comes down to personal preference. Fred and Ginger's number is very pretty, smooth, and in sync with a great song, but it's a bit slower and somewhat repetitive. O'Connor is energetic and fun with some neat athletic elements, but the song's not quite as good and he uses cuts and trickery to achieve some of the things he does. And Kelly's number is long, expansive, and really showcases a lot of skills and tricks, but the song's the worst of the 3 in my opinion. Overall, although I think Gene Kelly's dance is probably technically the best of the 3, I personally prefer Donald O'Connor's number. He has some fun tricks and does more with less, but that's just my opinion. Regardless of who you might like the best, they're all impressive dances. They are all prime examples of the skill and inventiveness of the dancers of the golden age of film musicals. And their impact was wide-ranging and long-lasting. Skating in musicals continued after this, from Funny Girl to Xanadu, and even served as a precursor to, and perhaps inspiration for, the roller disco craze of the 70s. And while I can't do all of the things seen in these clips, I will attest to the fact that dancing on skates is always good fun and good exercise. And if you can't skate, at least it's always fun to watch. Anyways, let me know what your favorite dance is in the comments, and thanks for watching.
So if you like pajamas and I like pajamas, I'll wear pajamas and give up pajamas. For we know we need each other, so we better call the calling off all.